All right, here he is. We're here with Mr. John Burt.
Howdy.
Howdy. I'm glad you're coming on because I wanted to talk to you about the ongoing USPSA saga, the litigation, and then kind of the state of the organization in general, and get your opinions on it. So, so how far post you being removed from the board are we? Has it been a month?
2 weeks.
It's
No,
been
a month.
2 weeks.
A month.
All right. I was like, it feels like longer than 2 weeks. Okay, in that month, what has happened?
The lawsuit was filed. The lawsuit was served. They failed to timely answer the lawsuit. And now a motion for default has been filed, which will be heard on the 25th.
Okay, so they didn't. Now I did see something different. Ben Berry made a post. I'm sure you're aware of this, claiming that they did answer the lawsuit.
Yeah.
And that it didn't get updated to the county website or something.
I'll leave Ben Berry out of my response and just say this.
Okay.
After I alerted them that they had failed to respond and that a motion for default had been filed, their attorney filed a notice of appearance so that he would get notice of things that happened. That document was filed on the 9th. After my motion for default, their response was due on the 8th. Anybody that would like to do the math and read the motion will see that they were served on the 19th. They had 20 days to respond. 20 days was the 8th, not the 9th.
All right. So do you, I mean, I'm not an attorney. I don't have experience with this type of litigation. Do you think the court will look, how do you think the court will look at that?
The court should enter the default on the 25th. And then we go to the next step, which is I file a motion to have judgment entered pursuant to the default, and they file a motion to have the default set aside. So that'll be heard at the same time. Different states handle things in different ways. Washington appears to take a pretty strict approach. So they would have to show good cause to set aside the default. And I don't know how they can do that when they were fully aware of the lawsuit and had an attorney. It'll be a tough road, but it certainly can happen. There is a public policy that favors litigating things on the merits. But Washington appears to be pretty strict that if you don't timely respond and you don't have a good reason why you didn't, the default will remain.
Right. So, I mean, to like a lot of observers, it's a little gay if it's not decided on the merits, right?
Well, it will still sort of be decided on the merits. If it goes this way, what will happen is I will file a motion to have judgment entered. I still have to prove the case, and that's the 17-page declaration essentially that I prepared that sets forth all of the violations. So all the court has to do is find one of those to be true, or more likely than not. And they don't get to dispute or offer evidence, but I still have to meet my minimum standard. So I think that that declaration on several points meets the minimum standard. And so what may happen is the court will say, okay, we're going to give you judgment of dissolution, except that we're ordering, they call it a conditional judgment. They'll say to the organization, if you fix these things that have been addressed by the lawsuit, then we will not dissolve you. And the judgment simply goes away when those things are fixed. That's the trajectory we're currently on. Of course, the default may be set aside, and then we litigate and do discovery and then have a hearing. Okay,
so I think I asked this a month ago, but I want to ask again. Like, what are you hoping to get out of the lawsuit? Because like, I mean, before I asked this, like, you sounded kind of okay with the organization just not existing anymore. Well, so, at least the legal entity.
And that's not going to happen. Right? I mean, I would be amazed if that happened. First things first, I have said to the board and to their attorney, I will stop this lawsuit today if you put it to a member vote. Just let the members decide these issues. So what do I want? I want to return to the status quo. I was elected to do a job and I should be put back into that position. I want version 3 of the bylaws passed, which everybody on the board, well, except Russell, said they would do and have approved and have spent more than a day going through and revising and updating to meet their satisfaction. So number 1 is my reinstatement. Number 2 is passing the bylaws we agreed on. And number 3 is just adopting a proper legal policy on meeting minutes and director access to records. And I'll dismiss the lawsuit tomorrow.
I imagine they're not going to take that deal.
No interest at all.
Oh, well, like, why not? I mean,
I
from
think
where
they still
from
think
where
that-
I sit, like, it's not entirely. I mean, we don't know all the back channel stuff that happened on the board, right? And we'll talk about some of it, but
Okay.
we don't really know.
We've got a pretty
Well,
good idea.
I don't mean we as in you. I mean we as in the audience. Like,
I think that somebody got legal advice on the internet and believes that this case still is going to go to Delaware, and there's just zero chance of that happening, regardless of what happens with the default. There's a very clear Washington Supreme Court case decided by a unanimous Washington Supreme Court that said, this is how we're going to handle these situations. And we absolutely have jurisdiction over this organization.
okay, can you explain that a little bit to people? This Delaware Corp domiciled in Washington, like,
Sure.
why would it be maybe like advantageous or disadvantageous to hear the suit in Delaware? Or like, can you explain all that?
Sure. 100 years ago, there were a number of cases across the country that said cases related to a corporation's bylaws or articles of incorporation should only be heard in the state where they are incorporated, because only that state has jurisdiction to regulate those issues. Since then, across the country, we've seen a massive expanse, obviously, of corporations that will choose the law they want for a state to incorporate, but then they headquarter somewhere else. So if you are headquartered in a state or you are doing business in a state, that state has a certain level of jurisdiction over you. Here, the USPSA has already stated in legal filings that its headquarters and domicile and principal place of business is the state of Washington. In fact, it's the only state that they have any connection to other than the original Articles of Incorporation. And they've gone a step further. They've said, we are a federal 501c3 with our headquarters in Washington State. We file our tax returns in Washington State. We're a registered charity. Our business license, everything is Washington State. And across the country, most states have said, we're not adhering to that rule where you can only hear corporate cases in a state where somebody is incorporated, because if you're going to do business in our state, we need a piece of that pie and keeping an eye on you and making sure you're doing the right thing. And thus, that's what the Washington Supreme Court said. The case is called Scott versus Trans Systems, that is actually directly on point with a dispute in how to run a corporation and how the court should handle it if there's a dispute like this.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Like, everything you said makes sense. Why would the corporation want this lawsuit to happen in Delaware?
Because it's the reason many corporations choose to incorporate there but do business somewhere else. The laws are far friendlier to the corporation than they are the shareholder, and it's far more difficult to bring an action like this against a corporation in Delaware.
Okay. I mean, okay, all this makes sense. All right, so like moving on to like the lawsuit part, like I mean, if there's not a default judgment and it goes to like discovery and other things, like what are you hoping to find out, or what will you be asking for in discovery? Like what are we looking to find out here?
Really nothing. I mean, there are no secrets. There isn't anything I haven't been able to figure out. And the really nice thing, again, about Washington law is I put forth these allegations of things that I think are true, and I put forward the basis for my belief. My burden of proof is very, very small, just a preponderance of the evidence. Have I shown that this is likely to have occurred? the burden then shifts to the corporation to prove what I'm saying is wrong. And so it's a different standard than you would normally have in a civil case. So I have put forth, and I've given them the declaration that says, here are all of the areas where I think we have violated corporate law and basic procedure and handling as a nonprofit organization. They then will have to come back and prove and refute each one of those things. So the only discovery I've done is, or I would do if the default is lifted, and again, I've sent them this and I've circulated this as well, is a request for documents that just says, as to each one of these allegations, what documents do you have that show I'm wrong? Whether or not they respond to that, it doesn't matter. If they just object, then they cannot introduce any evidence at the hearing on that topic. If they do respond and they have evidence, well, then great. That claim goes away and we move on to the next one. But there's 17 pages of thing after thing. And one of the main things when you look at corporate governance, anybody that owns stock in a corporation, every year you get an email that says, hey, we're having our annual meeting. Here are the issues we're going to discuss. If you're an NRA member, you get a notice every year of an annual meeting. Here's the agenda. Here's who we're going to vote on. Submit your proxy. It's a really basic thing that every corporation has to do and then document that in their minutes. We've never done it. There are meetings that have occurred at nationals, but they've never been noticed. They've never, to have a proper annual meeting, you have to give notice. You have to give an agenda. You have to invite all of the members or to submit a proxy. We've never done it. So that's one of the biggest issues there. And that was my proposal. Let's have an annual meeting. Let the members decide on the bylaws. Let the members decide on the directors. Let the members decide on whether or not they want to follow the law and adopt these policies. They are not interested. The members elect directors and these guys remove them.
Yes. Okay. So one thing I want to touch on is the annual meeting thing. It's actually one of the things that I considered to be like kind of the dirtiest things that, well, not this board, but like the old board, all the legacy cats, they would nominally have the annual meeting at nationals, but it was designed to not have you in attendance, not have any real issues discussed, and not give out any information. It was just check the box and they'd be like, oh no, we had a meeting. It was, over here, 20 people came, and it was just like, oh, you kind of get it. Like the whole point is to not have the meeting, to have a non-functional annual meeting that doesn't reveal information, they don't answer any questions, and they don't actually do anything.
And nothing about those meetings is legitimate in any way for corporate and legal purposes.
Well, it just seemed on the face of it, it seemed like obvious bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're getting a little somewhere. All right. So here's another thing. I've heard about this from a few people. It's kind of like you removed, it was a pretty specific issue at that point, access to documents. All right. How is there 17 pages of allegations? Like, what is that all about? Like, what is that stuff?
It is everything back to the dawn of time. So, one of the things is the organization has a duty to investigate allegations of impropriety. And really, I think what the declaration lays out is the hypocrisy. Scott Arnberg was removed over an email with information that became public the next morning, whereas all of the directors were presented with evidence that Leighton spilled specific confidential employee information about allegations against Yi Min to me in detail. And I presented that all to the board and said, hey, you've removed Scott, but here's all this information Leighton has leaked. At least investigate. Not one of them responded to ask for screenshots. And so that kind of hypocrisy going all the way back, Bruce Gary, I don't want to confuse
Bruce
the two.
Gary. If you're talking about Bruce one, the Lickathon guy.
Lickathon Bruce. Yeah.
Yeah.
They removed me for filing a lawsuit and for having opinions on a topic. This guy literally sexually harassed the organization's managing director. We paid a lot of money for that. And now this year we've learned that probably because of that lawsuit and Joe Rakowski's lawsuit, both of our insurance carriers have canceled not canceled, have issued notice of non-renewal. In Washington State, you have to give 1 year notice before you cancel a
Issued
policy.
notice of non-renewal. It's like, so they canceled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they didn't cancel it on the spot. They just won't renew it after the term. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
So that's our D&O policy and our general liability policy. And our D&O policy is a complete piece of shit. Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to describe it. The policy goes down by the day for every dollar spent. So it's not even $1 million policy. It's $1 million less whatever they spend defending the claims.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why are you suing over everything? I guess
Because
that's one question I've heard, because it's like, well, John's like, here's all right. You're put into office, like you've got an agenda that you want to do and new bylaws, a lot of energy. Okay. Like, I don't think people wanted to relitigate all that stuff.
I don't want to put my shittiest foot forward. It's not how I'm built.
Yeah.
I am going, and I think when you look at it, it isn't even just different allegations. It is such a pattern, year after year after year after year, of kicking anybody out that criticizes them,
Oh yeah.
as with you, removing directors, and taking a completely hypocritical approach in all of that, in who they choose to remove for what. You've got people there who get raises every year berating members. It makes no sense. But if anybody dares criticize one of them, they're immediately removed. And so that's what all of these different allegations, I think, demonstrate, that that's what this organization is and has been, and is so toxic that nothing short of the remedies I'm asking for are going to help.
All right. I mean, look, you're not going to get any argument from me if you're saying like, hey, there's a lot of history of all this stuff. Many people, like, looking back on the whole, like, back for me when I was thrown out and then years later ultimately reinstated, the things I said for 18 months, 2 years before that, and then during that time, I was able to predict with such accuracy what they would do, just based on understanding it the way that you described it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily arbitrary what they do. It's not really arbitrary at all. It's just, you can tell, like, oh, that guy's in the club, like he's going to be
Right.
golden. Like Leighton's not going to get touched.
Hypocritical, not
Yeah, it's like,
arbitrary,
yeah, it's
hypocritical.
like, oh, this guy over here, like he's saying stuff that's a problem for us. Like he's got to go. Oh, I remember when one guy who was a Brandon Radar, this idiot, this, I think, functionally retarded guy, to be honest, like modified his gun so it was legitimately very unsafe, dropped it, almost killed somebody, and they kicked him out for a year. Not for life, for a
They
year.
put me on the murderers list. I'm on the prohibited person. That's how bad I am. But I mean, look at Cameo. Cameo's a perfect example of the retardation. I mean, high
Yes.
capacity magazines were illegal in the state, and they kicked out a member who pointed that out to them.
Yes. And it's at the same time, like, this is like, people know me, like, I'm not really a rule follower, but I wouldn't get on the internet. Like, I wouldn't get on my YouTube channel and say, like, you can go to Colorado with high caps. It'll be fine.
Right. Just sign a
Right.
waiver.
Yeah. It's like, it's fine. You can just go. It's like, I mean, even if you could do that and it would probably be fine, it's like, like, I don't want to be in the position of telling you that it's okay to break the law.
And then
And
go a step further and
that's a
say,
level of responsibility I have for a YouTube channel, not like a national organization.
and then go a step further and say, here's this large custom gun maker. We don't want you sponsoring us anymore. We don't want you part of our custom gun community. And this guy, they view Joe as Satan. And it just makes no sense. There was a great conspiracy theory that Joe had funded my campaign because I was coming in to save him and repair the relationship. That I
No,
thought was amusing, but I
the,
didn't reach
the,
out even to Joe until the end of January, but okay.
the person that got you elected really was Leighton when he admitted well, he didn't, he just flat out said, he's just kind of like that Jim Adame was going to be his like proxy on the board. So
Yeah.
a vote for Jim was a vote for Leighton. And it's just like, well, that got John elected for sure. Cause people are sick of that douche canoe. Yeah. Okay. So where do you see this thing going? Like truly, like what do you think's going to happen from here?
Well, ideally, if the default remains, at the end of May, I could have a court order that just instructs them to fix the 3 items I raised or 4 items I raised. And we move forward with an organization that has a set of bylaws we all agree to that support member rights and transparency, and we follow the law in our records and our minutes.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's talk about like the public facing like optics part of this. Now, I think the optics for the board is actually quite bad. Like they're not saying anything, right? Like that's true. Like that was very bad for the old board when there'd be controversy and they just wouldn't talk. And it's like this board is kind of like they're like turtled up, like up in their guard. I mean, I've talked to a few of them just to be like, hey, you know, what's going on? And they're not really making public statements. They're not talking that much. Like to me, they're not really helping themselves by not telling a story. Do you have any like insight into what they're trying to do or what their strategy is as you see it?
The sad thing is I don't think they have a strategy. I don't think they know enough to know what they don't know. And that's part of the reason we're here. They are afraid of looking bad, and yet they keep looking bad and not listening. They got an opinion from their lawyer and didn't believe it, so they asked Chat GPT. I mean, instead of sitting down and being professional and having a conversation, I've sent a number of invites to Jim Boone. Hey, let's talk this through. Even going back to December. Hey, let's see what we can agree on and work together on, what we disagree on. The guy won't pick up the phone and have a conversation with me. We've never had a conversation. That's just cowardly and stupid. That's not professional and doing your duty that you owe to the membership. And I think that applies to many of them. Now, we see that 2 of them aren't returning, which is good. It opens the door, hopefully, for some good candidates. But it's just cowardly across the board.
Yeah.
Not across the board.
Or,
I think Alex is a great asset who I've worked with and is very professional and is doing the best he can under the circumstances. But I think he's the only one there with any modicum of professional experience or just the ability to pick up the phone and have a conversation and disagree with somebody.
well, I'd actually had dinner with Alex a few weeks ago, had a nice chat with him. I don't like I've known Alex for a while. Like I legitimately, he's a great guy. He's not the best public speaker maybe, but he's a great guy. He's very smart, very nice, and he's very likable. And you'll see like everyone around him likes him for a reason. He's very likable.
100%.
I mean, I think he and I like kind of saw like as far as you getting punted off the board, it's just kind of like how can this be the reason, or how can the board be in a position where they are removing John and it's like about like a documents request? Like it looks like irrespective of what even the facts are, like it looks insane.
Well,
It's
apparently
the
in
worst look.
January at the meeting, when I asked Alan, why did he lie? That was me being hostile and inappropriate with the managing director, even though his answer was because the board told me to. That was somehow my fault. Yeah, it's bizarre.
All right. I'm going to read you, like, I'm going to be a little bit critical. Well, I'm going to read you a statement, like a guy I don't know real well, but he's just like, he's just sent me this thing on Instagram a few days ago. So I think I'd read it. All right. So what's the end game for John? Question mark. I find it ironic he wants transparency, which hints that he wants positive changes for the org and all that. At the same time, is going full steam on the lawsuit. I'm not connecting the dots here. And I asked him, well, what do you make of it? He said, I don't know, man. It would help if I knew John. I don't know him at all. He does seem like a smart man. He's definitely not dumb. From what I've heard in podcast interviews, he doesn't like to be told what to do or likes to be told no. He seems to be someone used to getting his way. You spread these things on top of the last 6 or however long it's been. This seems like personal retribution, but I don't know. So it's a little bit like people are looking at this like, well, the board is not saying anything, and John is suing them for every fucking thing that's gone on in the last few years. So it's like, what would you say to that? Or like, what would you say to those people that are just watching this third party? Like, they don't really know. And they're like, what? Like, this John dude seems like he's got a big bug up his ass right now. What's this all about?
Well, I do. I have said when I got involved in this, it was because I started paying attention. I saw what Leighton was doing, and I thought it was wrong. And he said, "Well, if you don't like the way we're doing it, run for my job." And so I did. And
I
I
don't think
don't
he
like
really
the way.
meant that.
I don't think he did either. But I don't like the way they're doing it. They're sitting on $4 million of our money, and they're not following the law in any way, shape, or form. And that just drives me nuts. So I agreed to do something. I was elected to do something, and I'm doing something. And what I hear from that note and what I hear from a lot is, well, yeah, you should do something, but this is too much. Well,
Yeah. Okay. That's actually very fair. Like
yeah,
that's kind of where I think a lot of people are there. We're like, we want something done. We don't want the threat of the organization being dissolved. Like nobody wanted that. Nobody voted for you to do that. What's up?
right. No, 100%. And first of all, the organization isn't going anywhere if I win. It will only get fixed if I win, which is what I want. Um, But I did that. I started actually back in September drafting a new set of bylaws consistent with all of those ideas. Started trying to work with members of the board. And actually, we had a couple meetings with several board members where we reviewed those bylaws and made a bunch of changes before they were even submitted and before I was even on the board. And then once I got on the board, I continued to push it and try and drive that forward. And, we went to this retreat and it was this kumbaya corporate team building thing. And day 2, I sort of called bullshit and said, look, we're all here. We have this looming over our head. Let's address it while we're all in the same room, and kind of hijacked the day. And we spent the whole day pretty much just revising those bylaws and discussing different options and how best to do it and how to word it and rewriting it. Came back, sent it through the bylaws committee again, sent it to our lawyer. He made some changes. It was done and ready to go. Then things started brewing behind the scenes. People got scared of that. People on the board got scared of that. It was sort of the same thing, the same evolution with Troy, where, yeah, we're not ready to fire him, but lots of people got in on the vote to find a replacement. Something happened behind the scenes again, scared. I don't know what that was or what the communications were, but everything from a majority of the board started coming back as we need to slow this down. We need to slow the bylaws down. Oh, they're not ready yet. Um, and then I get word that they're going to remove me at the next meeting, and that the bylaws are not going to pass as we said they were going to at the March meeting. And so I was really left with no choice because I couldn't file this lawsuit once they removed me. And so I reached out again and said, hey, you guys are leaving me with no choice. I see what you're doing. Leif has said this is what you're going to do, apparently. Tell me I'm wrong, or tell me we can talk about this and figure out how to work through this. And they were just radio silent. And the more silent they were, the more obvious it became that's what they were working on and that's what they were going to do. And so I filed the lawsuit. And even when I filed it, it made it clear I will stop this in a second if you guys communicate and work this out, or submit it to a member vote, or just do what you said you would do, or just listen to what the lawyer is telling us to do. Done. I don't want to do this. And what I got back was radio silence from all of them except Alex.
I assume they already thought they were getting sued, or they
No,
would be sued.
no.
They were like, well, all right.
If you look at the March agenda, we had the bylaws, we had the policies for records and for minutes, all set to be heard and discussed. Instead, they couldn't even get, Alex, I think, brought those at the meeting after I was gone. He couldn't even get a second. There is no interest among those guys to fix these things and put their head out there.
And maybe it's a bit of an aside, but why hasn't Troy been fired? They went as far as to vote to find a replacement, which that
Oh
makes
God, and we
sense.
found the greatest replacement. I mean, night and day, this guy was amazing with an incredible amount of training, law enforcement, military experience, just a perfect candidate they would not even consider.
You could replace Troy with a baked potato, as far as I'm concerned, and it would be a substantial improvement.
Yeah. Oh, what this guy could have done for the organization, and hopefully still may someday, would just blow you away. Um, but I
They
don't
actually
know. I
found a
don't, is it,
replacement?
oh
What the
my God, yeah. A magnificent, perfect timing in the guy's life, ready to retire from a long career as a law enforcement training. I mean, just had designed amazing modern training programs for new recruits. Yeah, he would have been fantastic. Um, I don't know. I don't know what it is, you know, with Ben, it took him a few months before he went to the dark side. You know, his first podcast after taking office was keep up the protest, keep up the pressure. And then the next thing you know, he's kowtowing. It took Leif less than a month to go over to that dark side of, oh, we all just need to be friends and have a nice conversation and let people go shoot. And we can't, take any of these aggressive positions because the employees are scared. Oh, we can't ask Alan to do his job because that's just putting too much on him. I mean, we heard a lot of those comments during meetings. Oh, we can't ask the director of marketing to come up with a marketing plan. That's crazy. That's too much. He's got to do all this other stuff. Um, so and then I'm just being mean by pushing these issues and asking employees to do their jobs.
Well, like Ben's the guy on the board that I've known him the longest. I don't know him super well, but I've known him the longest. And I mean, I noticed, like, again, I specifically don't ask a bunch of stuff because I'm not that guy, and I don't want there to be, you know, thoughts that stuff's being leaked to me. I don't want to know. But the few conversations I've had is kind of like, man, like, hey, what's going on here? Ben to me he's always been kind of reasonable and willing to talk. And I did notice when you reached out to me, I think a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I reached out to Ben on your behalf to try to work a deal. Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, when that went down, like Ben replied to you privately, like I facilitated this, so I read everything. And then you took that and posted it, right? And we're clowning him.
Yeah.
So what was the expectation was going to come from that?
Well, I didn't take his response as, hey, Ben, thanks for reaching out. Yes, I would like to work with John and discuss these things. I took
It
his
wasn't
response.
that.
It was
That was not
clowning
his
me.
response.
No, I took his response as the same sort of hostile denial of reality that came to be the MO I viewed from him, supported by his ChatGPT legal advice. You're just wrong.
What do you mean?
That's what Ben was saying. It wasn't let's talk about these issues and work on it. It was,
I
no,
think he
you're
was
wrong, and here's
asking
why.
you, I think it was something like you want to compromise, but like, what are you offering? That was something like that.
Well, maybe I misinterpreted his response. I did not take it as a cordial professional. Yeah, let's see what we can work out. I took it as, fuck you, you're wrong, and here's all the reasons why. So what's the point?
Well, sure. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is like, I mean, you can take his email and post it and clown him if you want, but what's really the expectation that there'd be a deal with any of them then?
There have been quite a few conversations that we asked to keep confidential and that I kept confidential and that I have not and will not disclose. When you cross the line and bring people in outside of that and you say things that I think are just stupid and hostile, I'm going to react in a different way. Do I always react in the best way? Probably not.
Oh, no. Like, I have no problem sending mean emails to people. That is fine. If I send someone a mean email, though, like, I'm not expecting anything from them in the future. You know what I mean?
I viewed mine as exactly me saying back to him what he was saying to me. In my way versus his way, it was the same, just contrived bullshit.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say or talk about? Like, sure, people have a lot of comments trying to understand all of
Yeah,
the goings on.
I really do want to say this. I mean, with all of those comments, why are you not directing them to your director and asking why they don't want to let you vote and decide? This lawsuit goes away tomorrow if they agree to let the members decide in an annual meeting vote, period. Whatever the members decide to do, I will honor it 100%. The lawsuit goes away. So the gripe is not against me. I'm doing the only thing I know how to do in the way I think I was elected to do it, to save this organization for the membership and do what I was asked to do. If I'm wrong, let the members say that. Even when they were going to remove me, I said, hey, I will stipulate, just do a member vote right now, ask Area 2, should I be recalled? And I'm telling you that even if it only hits 50%, if you hit 50.1, I will resign immediately. Ask the membership what they want. So if you're upset, if you don't like what I'm doing, if you don't like what they're doing, ask them, why won't they put it to the membership? Why do they remove the directors that the members elect?
All right. Well, John, that's a great place to leave it. I assume hopefully people will put comments below and we can go through and address that stuff. But thank you very much, John. I do appreciate the update.
Thank you, Ben. Safe travels and thanks for doing this.
Thanks.